You've just read a Sherlock Holmes story by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He was a Scottish writer who lived from 1859 to 1930, and he's best known as the creator of Sherlock Holmes. He wrote about Holmes in 4 novels: A Study in Scarlet, the first time Holmes appeared, in 1886, The Sign of Four in 1890, The Hound of the Baskervilles in 1901 and 1902, it was serialized, and The Valley of Fear in 1914 and 1915, not to mention 56 short stories featuring Sherlock Holmes. The story you've read is The Adventure of the Speckled Band, which was published in 1892 in the Strand magazine with illustrations by Sidney Paget. Of course, the most interesting thing about the story is the central character, Sherlock Holmes, and his enduring fascination in our culture. In many ways, like Frankenstein, Sherlock Holmes has become a modern myth. We'll work out in our discussion group some of the things that make Holmes such an intriguing character, but right now I want to talk about a few other aspects of the story, aspects that you may not have thought about. First, there's the anti-romantic view of the country. The Adventure of the Speckled Band is set in the English countryside, right? For the Romantics, this is a place of peace and harmony as opposed to the dangerous and corrupt city. But Conan Doyle provides a different view. The countryside is the site of crime. It's dangerous because of its solitude. This is from a different story, The Adventure of the Copper Beeches, published in the same year in the graphic in the Strand in 1892. It was an ideal spring day, a light blue sky flecked with little fleecy white clouds drifting across from west to east. The sun was shining very brightly, and yet there was an exhilarating nip in the air with such an edge to a man's energy. All over the countryside, away to the rolling hills around Aldershot, the little grey and red roofs of the farm steadings peeped out from amid the light green of the new foliage. "Are they not fresh and beautiful?" I cried, with all the enthusiasm of a man fresh from the fogs of Baker Street. But Holmes shook his head gravely. "Do you know, Watson," said he, "that it is one of the curses of a mind with a turn like mine that I must look at everything with reference to my own special subject. You look at these scattered houses, and you are impressed by their beauty. I look at them, and the only thought which comes to me is a feeling of their isolation and of the impunity with which crime may be committed there." "Good heavens!" I cried. "Who would associate crime with these dear old homesteads?" "They always fill me with a certain horror. It is my belief, Watson, founded upon my experience, that the lowest and vilest alleys in London do not present a more dreadful record of sin than does the smiling and beautiful countryside." "You horrify me." "But the reason is very obvious. The pressure of public opinion can do in the town what the law cannot accomplish. There is no lane so vile that the scream of a tortured child or the thud of a drunkard's blow does not beget sympathy and indignation among the neighbours. And then the whole machinery of justice is ever so close that a word of complaint can set it going, and there is but a step between the crime and the dock. But look at these lonely houses, each in its own fields, filled for the most part with poor, ignorant folk who know little of the law. Think of the deeds of hellish cruelty, the hidden wickedness which may go on year in, year out, in such places, and none the wiser. The very solitude that the Romantics valued in the countryside has become a source of danger." Now, we haven't had much opportunity yet to talk about the British Empire, which has been growing steadily through the 19th century, largely because of industrial Britain's economic strength and the power of its naval forces. This, between 1815 and 1914, Britain added 10 million square miles and 400 million people to its empire. This is a map of the empire in 1897 with British territory shown in pink. You see Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, together with large territories in Africa, and of course, what was called the jewel in the crown, India. You can see that it was true that at the time, the sun never set on the British Empire. The wealth provided by the empire, as well as the new products and people that flooded into Britain, played a large role in Victorian life, though the empire and how it should be ruled was a contentious issue in British politics. We can read The Speckled Band as a kind of critique of the empire, though a mild one. Dr. Roylott is man of the empire, an Englishman returned from making his fortune in Calcutta. His violence is associated with his appalling behavior in India. He beat his native butler to death and narrowly escaped a capital sentence. He brings his violence back to England, along with some exotic animals. Dr. Roylott keeps a cheetah, a baboon, and as we later learn, a swamp adder on his estate in the English countryside. Interestingly, the cheetah could conceivably have come from India at the time, and the swamp adder did come from India, but the baboon must have come from other British territories in Africa. Now, the cheetah and the baboon are there partly to provide clues to the mystery so that it's not such a surprise when Dr. Roylott also keeps a swamp adder. But they also indicate a threat posed by the British Empire to the British homeland. The empire strikes back. This time, though, Holmes manages to contain that threat with his use of clear Western rationality. The legacy of the British Empire. The empire did have a significant effect on life in Britain through migration and cultural influence from many places around the globe, especially India and Pakistan. Britain is a very different country from what it would be had there been no British Empire. But of course, the British Empire had significant effects on the countries it ruled, effects that continue long after these countries achieved their independence. Negative effects include, among many others, the suppression of local tradition and culture, sometimes harsh and despotic rule, and the exacerbation of conflicts between ethnic and religious groups. Another legacy of the British Empire is the English language. Because of the extent of the British Empire, English has become the common language, the lingua franca, for international trade and diplomacy and academic discourse. Through the 20th century, we'll see the gradual decline and final loss of the British Empire, sometimes through violent resistance, but often through the voluntary relinquishment of power.